Yes, it's Jameson Tonight, flying high with the fabulous Thunderbirds. Have a look at this.
We're closing in on him, lady.
Good, Parker. Wait till we get to a clear stretch of road. We don't want to create a scene.
Very good, lady.
Go ahead, Parker.
Yes, milady.
Well done, Parker.
Thank you, madam. Home, milady.
Home, Parker.
Love it.
Well done, Parker. Thunderbirds, yes, now on Channel 5 Video, a cult classic in 47 countries. And tonight we welcome the genius behind that lot. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Gerry Anderson. How about that, Gerry? That was a good puff for you, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I'm glad you chose a piece that was non-violent.
Indeed. Where did those voices come from? What was the significance of that terribly precise upper-class voice? Thank you, Parker. Home.
Well, really, the problem we always had was any TV show that had any kind of big budget had to sell in America. And so rather than have, you know, a series about Scotland Yard with an American in the lead and running around London toting guns, I always felt it was better to make a show that was basically an American show. But the show had to be shown over here, so we thought to represent the British we would have Penelope and Parker.
So even all those years ago, because Thunderbirds, the height was, what, 64 to 66, even then you really had to have an eye on the American market.
Oh, we see, even then, I think even more then.
Even more than
I mean, at the time, I would think probably 70% of the money on a television series came from America.
And the rest from Lou Grade.
And the rest from Lou Grade. Yes, dear old Lou, he was a great man.
Gerry, you were born in 1929, 33 years ago. You were a relatively unknown film editor. You'd been in the film business, you'd done your national service, born in northwest London. Where's that, Willesden?
Well, I was very fortunate because I was born in Hampstead. The other side of the road was Kilburn.
Yeah, indeed.
So, I mean, you know, I can
Not
say
far
whichever
off.
way you like. I can either say Kilburn or Hampstead.
And then, of course, like all puppet and animation series, Thunderbirds is only part of the story because it began far more modestly than that with Twizzle, didn't it? That was your first.
I mean, you're now going back, in fact, to 1958. And Twizzle was the first show that I made with my own company.
Yeah.
And it was Twizzle that led me into puppets. I mean, a lot of people think that I actually wanted to make puppet films. In fact, I always hated little bastards.
Not Lady Penelope as well.
Even Lady Penelope. I mean, they were so difficult to handle. I could never really make them do anything that I considered to be worthwhile. But I fell into a stupid trap. I tried so hard to make each series, I thought, that good that the distributors would look at it and say, hey, this guy, you know, is really good. He should be making feature films like James Bond. But of course, what happened is that they would look at the show and say, oh, it's great, you know, get him to make another one. So I kind of dug my own grave, as it were.
Yeah, because after Twizzle, Torchy the Battery, I remember Torchy the Battery.
Really?
And then there was Sting, Rival, XL5.
Joe 90. Love Joe 90. Joe 90.
Shane has got all of them.
I've got them all on video. I've got Joe 90, Captain Scarlet and Thunderbirds.
That is Joe 90, you mentioned, yeah. But why was it, Gerry, out of all that tremendous output, the one that captured the imagination of the world was Thunderbirds?
Well, you know, like every other film producer, if I was sure of the answer, I would have the key to success for every show I ever made. My own view is that Thunderbirds was an hour in length. All the other shows were half an hour. And so on each story there was an opportunity to get to know and like a group of people, put them in jeopardy, and then spend some time rescuing them against the clock. So that was one reason. The other reason, I think, is that you know, it's an unfortunate fact of life that kiddies love destruction.
Yeah.
You know, they just love violence and destruction.
Oh, yeah.
And yet here we are all trying to be responsible program makers. With Thunderbirds, it had action, it had explosions, it had everything.
Yeah, yeah.
And yet, it really was not a violent program as such, because it was, you know, people rescuing.
And also Captain Scarlet couldn't die though, Gerry, could he? As much as you tried, he wouldn't have it, would he?
Safe and sound. Did it lead, you talked about making real films, Joe. Did it lead to Star Wars and the big things like that? Is that where they got the idea from?
It certainly did, because I think it's fair to say that probably 60% of the special effects technicians in this country now started in my studios. 3 of the special effects directors are now Academy Award winners.
Wow.
So yes, I think it did trigger off the major.
That's where the talent and the creativity came from. And you yourself, you did go on to make real life films.
Well, I made real live television films. I made a series with Robert Vaughan and Nari Dawn Porter, and a series called Space 1999 with Martin Landau and
Ed Bishop in UFO.
Ed Bishop in UFO.
UFO, yeah.
He's done his homework too.
Oh, I know it. I've got them all on video, you see.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan.
So you always had this thing for sci-fi and the world beyond and so on?
Well, here again, you see, not intentionally. I've always been interested in flying. When I can sit at the end of a runway and I can watch aircraft take off and just marvel at 350 tons of metal lifting into the sky. And when I made the early puppet films, I managed to get the puppets to do most things reasonably well, but I could never get them to walk. And so I had what I thought was a brainwave. I invented a vehicle called Supercar, which could fly, which could go on the sea, which could go under the sea. And I thought, all I do is sit the puppets in this car and whiz them around. It'll look action-packed, and yet the puppets really would be doing very little. And of course, the distributors, God bless them once again, says he and sincerely, the distributors said, you know, fantastic, you see, he does science fiction.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's give him another science fiction. I enjoy doing science fiction, but again, it wasn't by design.
The million-dollar question, since it was all so successful and it worked so brilliantly, what happened? Why aren't you still making Thunderbirds?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because, as I'm on Sky, I'm a great supporter of Sky, and I want it to succeed. And one of the reasons is that you have all these ITV companies, and they're all saying how much money they've got and how interested they are in good programming. Yeah. I meet people every day of the week who say, why don't you make another Thunderbird series? Yeah. Can I get the ITV companies interested? The answer is no. So that's the answer.
Get it done.
They are Rupert Murdoch, Gordon French.
Get it done.
All our bosses, we would love to see it, wouldn't we?
God.
It's on video now for Christmas. You're about to write your autobiography. We've already got one book out, Anderson, The Complete Gerry Anderson. There you are. How about that?
And do you know the most avid reader of that?
Shane Ritchie.
Me.
No, me.
You, Gerry Anderson.
Because the people who wrote that know more about my shows than I do.
I bet they do. Well, we've had great fun going back, how it started, what it's all about. Thanks for coming in, and good luck in the future. Gerry Anderson. And talking of the ITV companies, next we have 4 lively characters from that runaway success, Home and Away. We'll be right back.